And welcome to another Biddle on Saturday night. How's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Pretty good, thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
You guys seem so excited. So excited.
Oh yeah. Can't hide it. Not
It's
at all.
probably because the distro you've been trying this week. Huh?
Oh, yeah,
Let me guess.
Yeah, that's
Minty
fantastic.
fresh feeling, yes.
I gave it 5 minutes.
Oh wow! Wow. Okay, man, this is not starting off good. This is definitely not starting off good.
Maybe we should start off at the bottom of the pile today, then, or the bottom of the screen, and work our way up.
All right. Well, can I get a confirmation from the chat saying that we are live? Because I don't see anything on here.
Absolutely
I don't see anything
not.
here.
Yeah, we are live, and you get no echoes, and the sound is good from what I can tell.
Okay. All right. So we are live. Are you sure we're live, dude? Because
I don't see it anywhere.
I don't
There's
see
a light on
anything.
here.
Mathias said yep.
all right. So anybody that has issues with the actual notices, their YouTube is having a goofy day today where it's not showing people live. It's not showing like notifications. So if that ever happens, you can just go to the Big Daddy Linux YouTube channel and just type in that /live after it. And
Also, make sure to
you
retweet the stream.
yeah. Did you see that YouTube's getting rid of that?
Oh,
The auto sharing.
that's crazy.
They said that they're getting rid of the auto sharing to services like Twitter and that stuff, so that because it's more original coming from the creators themselves when they do it manually.
Oh, that's
Okay.
Oh, well, it saves you time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we did have a distro challenge this week, and I just want to say before we start that
There it is.
I know that everybody doesn't like all of the distros they try, but this is about giving feedback to the community, so let's try not to rail on them too hard. I want honest opinions. Honest opinions, though.
Okay.
All right. Who would like to go first?
Mine's going to be real short.
Okay, Barb, go ahead. It's all you.
Well, as you know, I normally try these as live USBs, and I did, and it worked and everything, but there was one thing that drove me crazy. I could not get my window buttons on the left. I couldn't find anywhere to do it either.
I don't think there's anything in the settings from Mint
That's enough
itself.
for me to say bye-bye.
I mean, you can probably do it in the deconf editor, but I don't think it's anywhere specifically in the settings to put
Yeah,
them
there's
on the left.
nowhere in the settings.
Wait, hold on. Which were you trying? You were trying Mate?
Mate, yeah.
Mate. Yeah,
Okay,
and
in
that can be an
cinnamon,
option.
there is.
Yeah.
Yes.
No
Mate,
way.
there isn't, but every other version of Mate that I've run, Solus, whatever, they all have that option in the Mate tweaks.
So
And it's
okay, so
not in
was
the Mate tweaks.
Mate Tweaks installed and it wasn't there, or was it Mate Tweaks not installed?
Mate tweaks was installed and it wasn't there,
Ooh.
and
I
that
wonder
was
if
enough
they're-
for me to say,
I wonder if they're using an older version of that, or they just maybe took it out. I don't know. Well, I don't
have
see
no
why they
idea.
would take it out.
I mean, they had all sorts of, you could change the colors of all your folder icons and all this kind of stuff. You know, there are like 20 different colors and 20 different styles, but you couldn't just, and it's a part of Mate.
That's
So-
about choice, Barb. It's all about choice.
Yeah, so they take a choice away from me that exists in every other version of Mate I've ever tried on any other distro.
I feel your pain because I like the buttons on the left myself.
So do I.
So I'm sorry to hear that it didn't go well for you.
Yeah, so that was enough, and I said, forget it. I mean, I could print from the live USB and all this kind of stuff, but nah, if I can't have my buttons on the left, I'm an unhappy camper.
Just
Okay.
reverse your screen around.
I can turn it upside down.
yeah, that'll do it.
All right, let's get the bad out of the way.
That was it.
Tyler,
I'm done.
Tyler, I know you didn't have a great experience with Mint. Tell us about it.
The only issue I had is I had an issue with Pulsati where anytime I opened something like Mumble or tried to join in on a Discord server, my audio would mess up and I'd have to force reload also. Other than that, I set it up. I changed the settings the way I wanted. I ran it for a few hours. I even messed with editing the theme on my blog for the few hours I was on it.
Which version did you try?
Cinnamon.
Nice. All right. Let's see. Zeb, go ahead. We're just going to go in order. That way it makes it easier.
Okay, well, I actually tried 2 versions this week because I had high hopes for the cinnamon version because Farron had told me that they'd just brought out a new update to it, and I was thinking, great, it's going to fix my disappearing screen issue. And no, it didn't.
No.
So,
what is your disappearing screen issue?
I can move a window from my, let's say, my central monitor to either left or right, and it just disappears into the background as if it's underneath the desktop layer. If I can remember where I dropped it and I click back on the title bar, it will come back up. If I move it to one of the screen edges so that it pins, and then move it again so it's back in the middle, it will stay where it is. But if I then move it to the central screen and move it back off again, it just disappears. And it does it on Fedora, Antigos, Mint. So it's a cinnamon issue.
I think it's an issue with Muffin, which is the window manager they're using.
Yeah, it could be. Now, Alan gave me a very good tool which allows you to work out where all of your windows are sitting geographically and what they're doing. And it didn't do anything other than tell me, yeah, it's there. And I'm going, no, it's not, because I can't see it. So he had brought that because he thought it was shooting off and disappearing 3 miles up into the ether. So you could have seen that it was like a negative coordinate or something. But it's none of that. And I really just don't know. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to take a bug report that says my window disappears.
Isn't that what KDE used to do with the wobbly windows? If you moved it too fast, it would just fly off.
I don't remember that.
So someone's telling me I've got a webcam mic going on. Is that right?
It's possible. You do sound a little different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you do sound different today, Zeb, I must say.
I didn't even take notice.
I mean,
Okay, what about now? Is that better?
That's
Oh,
much
there
better.
you go.
Much better.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Much better.
Well, you can blame Windows on that. Oh,
Oh, jeez.
I'll get into that later on in the show.
Okay,
So,
all right.
My bog standard XFCE, which always works, and yet it's a great distribution. Linux Mint Cinnamon is really, really good. Yes, I know it doesn't look pretty out of the box, but Mint take care of that. You then do all of the things that you want to do, and it's there, and it works, and it's there, and it works. It's a great distribution. I will point anybody to start off with Linux Mint. It's just one of those things that's boring, because it just works and it looks so good, so there's nothing really to do with it. But you know, from an experience point of view, apart from the cinnamon issue, which is cinnamon, Mint is a rock solid distro that you can have no problems about sending anybody to, unless you want your buttons on the left, I guess.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Or scaling.
No, but you do have a point, though. It's people like us that are like the really critic people that critique every little detail. But on the face of it, Linux Mint is a great distro to hand to somebody, especially if they're not familiar with Linux.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a fair synopsis, Rack. We'll call us critics. I think
we're bad, pretty bad sometimes, Joe.
Yeah.
and the
Well,
one thing,
yeah, but more in-depth users.
What was the word we used? Was it dumpster fire?
and
No,
the one
it's
thing
not- I
that
don't-
you could put me slightly off of Mint was
Hey,
their
listen,
one
we
to
are
5.
mild compared to the review that he gave me. So
I don't want to say that we're critics. I want to say that sometimes we're pretty hard on things that are kind of minor. So, and that's me included. So,
Yeah. So the good thing is they have now gotten rid of the 1 to 5 settings in their Mint update. So now everything comes through. I know you can still pick, no, just keep me solid, keep me stable, and all the rest of it. But they don't confuse people with the 1 to 5 numbering system, telling people that kernel updates, they're really bad and you shouldn't do them. No, you should do them because they contain security updates. So they've gone away from that now. So that's all good. So for me, yeah, I had a good experience apart from the cinnamon, which is a cinnamon desktop issue, not the OS issue. So all good.
all right. Matthias, did you try Linux Mint?
Yeah, I kind of have running it since at least 5 years, so I don't know if I'm the right to criticize.
That's good. That's good. Tell us. Which version do you run? Cinnamon?
Yeah, I have been on Cinnamon since I started using it about 5 years ago.
And you just now have you upgraded through, or have you reinstalled when they've done updates?
Most of the times I have just upgraded, and I usually run the big betas too. And this time I started even at alpha, so I have reinstalled this time eventually.
Right.
But it's not Mint's fault. It's what me that was too technical with it, so I screwed it up. So
see, Terry Love got it right in chat. He said picky. The word is picky. That's what we are.
Picky, that's right.
And I think that might be a topic later that we're going to bring up. Remind me to bring that up. So, anything else you want to mention about Mint?
Well, I think it's a solid distro, and I have quite a few friends that I have converted, and the support calls from when they were on Windows, they have just tanked, so it just works.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that goes back to what Zeb was saying, and like I said, I agree.
And in Cinnamon, when they're coming from Windows 7 or Windows XP, they feel right at home. So they don't need to learn anything. And you install Chrome or Firefox, that's all they need.
To be honest with you, I think Cinnamon is like that perfect middle ground.
Yeah.
Where it has, to me, really good choices in the settings area, where it's not dumbed down to where you can't change anything. Got a lot of customization options, but it doesn't have so many that you are, you're going to get lost.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, and if you're coming from Windows, XP and 7, everything is where you expect it to be.
Yep. Yeah. All right, Dan, tell us about Linux Mint.
Yeah, I did the Mate version as well, and the buttons on the right didn't bother me, but so that was okay. I didn't go looking for that. So I will say that the ability to theme it is there, and it's complete. It's throughout when you change something, so that's kind of nice. You didn't have to worry about different themes and whatnot, so that was good. I didn't play around with it a ton, but I spent a little bit of time in it. It's not bad. I could see if you were coming from Windows, probably a really good choice. But yeah, it's a little boring maybe. but in a good way, right?
Boring is good sometimes.
That's kind of what you want for the new user, for sure.
Well, we'll get into why you didn't have a whole lot of time to play around with it after we talk about.
Sure.
All right, Peter, you're up, brother.
Okay. Most people know me as Mint Spider, hence the history.
Yep.
I ran Linux Mint from version 6 to 16. Most of the time I was on XFCE. Did try Mate for a little while. My claim to shame, by the way, is I was the owner of the Linux Mint Facebook group for years. So I was the guy who took a lot of flack for many years on Facebook.
Sorry, guys.
Linux Mint, I'm running it right now on the Optiplex, no problem. Zoom installed fine. I tried a snap package. I tried a flatpak, all flawless. I had zero issues, no issues whatsoever. So,
have you upgraded like Matthias all this time, or did you have to reinstall?
No. This is a brand new install.
Okay.
I stopped using Linux Mint 2 years ago because Solus appeared, and Solus. Try it sometime, Rocco.
Yeah, maybe I'll try it sometime.
Maybe for about a year.
Yeah, maybe I'll run it for a year. I mean, I'm sure it's so great that I would have no other choice than to run it for a year.
By the way, just to finish up, I had running Linux Mint XFCE for last week has made me love XFCE again. So I actually tried and installed Ubuntu today, and I love Ubuntu as well. Huh? I actually gave Sean Davis a Patreon. So.
Yep, definitely a pretty awesome distro that gets overlooked sometimes. Matter of fact, on one of the comments for one of the Biddle's previous ones, and I forget which one it was, but somebody commented that we mentioned Ubuntu, and it was great to hear somebody actually mention it because it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
So.
And that's it.
Nice. All right, Joe, you're up.
There she is.
Nice.
Cinnamon. Cool. I had 19 when it first came out on VMs. I had all of them on there actually, but I tended to play with Cinnamon and XFCE a little more. I really did like XFCE, and the funny thing is, I threw them in the VMs just for the heck of it again. And the guest editions works fine on, which I don't know if this is even relevant for Cinnamon, but yet XFCE would not size up. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, running Cinnamon on here, the downside to running it on this laptop and the plus side to it, the plus side is I could test it on a laptop, I got a touch screen, I could test all those things on it. The downside is I don't have the multi-monitors like I used to have where you ran it, test like what Zeb was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I really do like the polished appearance of it. I like the fact that you've got sliders in your settings now, or if you want to move your icons around in placement on the desktop. One of the things I've always liked about it, which I hate to say this, I almost forgot about it, was the radio buttons. I mean, if you want to turn things on and off or move stuff around or whatever, it's just a matter of a click of a radio button, and it takes care of it. An example of that is I like Gwake in here for a terminal manager. And that, like in my beloved Mate, I have to go in and create a startup menu and point it to it and all that. We're here. I go in there and it says, which one do you want? Oh, click add, and then you point to which program, and you scroll down and click it, and it's done. It's working flawlessly as far as speed, and I'm curious now just to see that I've got it running, but I wanted to look at resources, and right now it's at 619. Last night it was up a little higher, so there might have been something running in the background. Everybody was talking about how resource heavy it is. 600 is probably still a little higher, but it's not. I don't think it's that much higher than what I had for MX. MX, by the time I wrote software, was what, 5 something? They said 550s. So I don't. To me, it seems like it's running well. I mean, it doesn't seem resource heavy. I don't know where people are coming up with that, unless it depends on what you're running. I didn't load a lot of stuff in there because a lot of it was already loaded in there. But I'm liking it. I think it's a little unfair statement to say it's somebody coming from Windows. That's it's kind of like, yeah, this is a good choice for them, but I don't think this is only for those type of people. Would I leave Mate for it again? Probably not. I did have a Mate version of this. I think it was 17.3 before. But I don't know. I would definitely be willing to run it on another machine, and keep it on there, So I think it's nice. I couldn't find too much wrong with it.
Nice.
I have a comment there about the resources, and I have a beast of a machine. I have a dual CN and 130 gigs of RAM, so and then it takes resources. So now it has been up for 9 days, and I have several Chrome windows open with many tabs and so on. So, and as it's now, it's using 60 gigs of RAM. So,
wow. But is that really fair to say, though, Mathias, that it's the distro versus? I mean, Chrome is resource hungry as it is.
Yeah, I can easily shave off at least 10 gigs and just Chrome. So
yeah.
But I have the resources, and if I look at the whole, I have 113 gigs of RAM or 112, and it uses 16, so it's still just a fraction of what it could use. So
yeah.
Most Linux distros that I've run will expand what they use to fit the system RAM.
Yeah.
And whatever the system has, they will make the most use of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have the resources, it will utilize more of the resources.
But to me, that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's perfectly okay if you have them
Perfectly fine.
available to use them. That's why I have them, right?
Yeah.
You say that, Dreaming Wolf, but I've never seen it on my system use more than 20 gig of RAM, and that's because I had 6 virtual machines running at the same time. Linux runs so much leaner than any other OS, even when you're doing heavy stuff.
Oh,
I guess
yeah.
the only thing that affects that will be if you're doing some, really intensive graphical processing, which I'm sure Chicken does quite a lot.
No.
Using a lot is a relative term when you're dealing with Linux. I mean, Linux is going to be leaner than anything else. It's just within Linux, an Arch system. I've got a laptop with 2 gigs of RAM that runs Arch just fine, but my main desktop that has 64 gigs, it runs a lot more RAM running Arch, the same kind of install.
Yeah.
It's just it will expand to what you have, but it's still going to be leaner than pretty much anything else out there.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's probably why it makes it run so well, too.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, I'd like to go back to you for a second. You said you ran it for a couple years, but you mentioned XFCE and Mate. You never tried Cinnamon, or you never wanted to, or what?
I did. I think I tried a couple of times, but my main distros, my main these were XFCE and Mate.
Okay.
And it was Mate more towards the end. Huh?
All right, Colin, you are up, sir.
Rightio. Well, I think it's no surprise that Linux Mint Cinnamon is one of my most favourite desktops. Back in the day when GNOME Gnome went to GNOME Gnome 3, and I, lost that tweakability to make the system look the way I wanted, I went to Cinnamon. And I've been sort of on and off it all those years ever since I started. I just think it's a good desktop. It's a great working paradigm if you come from Windows 10. Now with the new panel implementation, the modern panel they've just implemented in 19.1, it's very much up to speed with the way Windows 10 panel works. So you could pretty much pick it up and continue on Linux Mint Cinnamon, no problem if you're coming from Windows 10. I think the one thing I've noticed is their time shift. It'd be great if they could give an option rather than just sort of like slamming it right in your face and you have to use it. I think that just to me is a little bit annoying. They should, because some people just don't like to use those things. We do things in other ways. So there are ways of turning that off, but some people may not want to use it. So I think there's a bit of because they've changed their level of structure with their updates, I think that's just a bit of an overkill with the time shift when it first starts up. So I think they could just look at maybe just sorting that out a bit and just give people an option whether they want to use it or not. I think that would be great. And the other thing is they've made a few changes where you can change the 3 separate parts of the panel. You can increase or decrease the size of your icons and so forth. The clock is the only one that you can't change, so it'd be nice. No doubt they'll probably be looking at implementing that in the future. So just a little right click and it's got a configuration, but no changes on the sides of the clock. So that would be great to see that implemented as well. Otherwise, I've been running Linux Mint for the last 4 or 5 months now on my main system, and it works well. I've got 2 screens, but I don't have any issues like Zeb's having with disappearing windows. So I'm just running Intel, so maybe that's why, I don't know. Otherwise, I think it's just a great distro and it just works. And if I was to install anything on anyone's computer, this will be the one, because it just, it's going to be rock solid and just work. Yeah, it has its issues, just like every other operating system does, but I just find it's a really good operating system to use.
Yep, I agree.
Impressed. Yeah.
But you had somebody that you had just recently switched over, didn't you?
Yeah, that was my brother. He was running Windows 10 on a really low spec laptop, so I put him on Cinnamon. Yeah, he's back over east in Australia, but and I don't know how often he uses it, but I've had He hasn't had any issues with it, so he hasn't said anything. So it's just working for him, which I expect it to do anyway. When it comes to Linux Mint, it's going to work. So, and I keep close eye on Ferran OS too. He's doing a pretty good job over there with these Cinnamon versions. So yeah, great distro.
All right, Chicken, you are up, sir. You have somebody by your side.
All right. Well, as much as I'd like to be mean to Mint, there's a lot of good things to say about it. So I'm going to be fair. I was very impressed actually with 19.1. A lot of good things, specifically with the Cinnamon desktop overall, have come to light. As you mentioned, Colin, with the adjustability of the icons individually is super nice, because sometimes the system tray stuff doesn't scale on its own. Being able to set that yourself is great, especially if you have a custom icon set. That's really, really nice to have. And I actually never actually thought to look into the clock thing, but if that's not there, I no doubt they'll have that at some point, because somebody will mention it. But it was really good to see, when I first booted in, they've got the little new welcome screen that they have now, which is a little nicer than the old one. So I kind of like that. And in regards to the updates, that used to be a problem. It's not now. They've kind of cleaned it up. It's not as much of a scare to people who are new to the system, which I really do enjoy. And one of the kind of back-end things that I've really appreciated is the people that work on the Software Center, the Update Center, and the Flatpak integration. They've actually separated those components to where you can uninstall specific ones without them all getting ripped out together. So it's really nice. If I don't want Flatpak, I can just remove that. Or if I don't want the updater, but I still want the Software Center, I can only take out the updater. And it's really nice to have that flexibility, because beforehand, you just lose the whole set, and it wasn't ideal. So they've worked really hard on just patching everything through and making sure it was a really stable, solid, and beautiful release. And yes, you can put the window buttons on the left. I'd just like to point out how great that is.
In Mate?
No, I use Cinnamon,
okay.
of course. Yeah.
And not only can you put the buttons on the left or right, you can remove any ones you want.
Mix
You
and
can
match.
set exactly what you want on there, which is awesome.
They've done a lot of great work. And in regards to resource usage, Cinnamon, I've always found, has never been too heavy in regards to RAM usage. There was a time when it was a bit bloated. But now I think it mostly just comes down to CPU usage at this point. It doesn't store much unless you've given it a ton to work with. But it's mostly just CPU bound, and they've done a lot of work on optimizing their code base. It's been slimmed down a ton, and I'm very impressed by what they've done. So it requires less CPU usage to run. It requires less memory to run, but it's flexible in that it can definitely eat both if you give it the food to eat.
It's going to eat what you give it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Just
they
like
have
any others.
done really, really good work on optimization from the last 2 generations.
Yeah, it really is.
Colin, and for your clock issue, I normally tend to remove the cinnamon clock and put, is it orange clock on there? Because that just Orange, that's the one, yeah. And then you can change the text, you can change the font, you can change the size.
What desktop environment are you talking about, though, Zed?
Cinnamon.
They got Orange clock for Cinnamon?
I thought that was an XFCE applet.
Yeah, that's an XFCE.
I thought you could add it as a droplet, or there's certainly another clock that you can add.
Oh, there might be an applet. There may be an applet.
Yeah, that allows you to change the date, because you have this wonderful screen and then this tiny little date in the corner with the time.
Yeah.
Ever since they redid the cinnamon spices, I love how they call it that. There's been some really nice ones that come out that tend not to break everything, so it's pretty nice.
The first one I install is what is it? Cinnamon menu.
Yeah, I know you and your custom cinnamon menus.
Dude, that is like so awesome. It is way better than the default
really
menu.
Good.
Way better than the default menu.
One thing I forgot to mention, Rocco, the default menu now has a scrolling in the favorites, so it doesn't increase the size of the menu anymore.
Right. Which is good. I mean, it's not a terrible menu, but it's not my favorite either. Definitely, when I installed Cinnamon, it was like one of the first things I did: remove the main menu and put on the Cinnamon menu. So
That's what you wanted to do in Budgie, wasn't it? Would get rid of the Budgie.
I was going to say,
there isn't a distro out there that has a good default menu.
I was
Other
going to
than-
say, do you
other than
have
XFCE.
a preferred menu?
Do I what?
No.
What do you say?
Do you have a preferred menu? You need to create your own Rocco menu.
It's either Brisk or a Whisker menu, no doubt.
Well,
Whisker.
Brisk is okay, but it's lacking some features that never got put into it. Whisker is really nice. It probably comes the closest for being the best menu, with the exception of it's not as customizable as it should be. Like, there's no option to make a icon view rather than a list view, that kind of thing. So, like, I love Elementary's menu.
I bet you do.
But, yeah, it's definitely... Whisker is great. It's just that I like to have it customized more than it. Look at that. Hold on. I forgot to show you.
Nice. Accurate.
I guess I earned that.
All right, Dave, you're up. Linux Mint.
I did the XFCE version. I didn't have a ton of time to work with it because I was actually sent on a hunt looking for Rocco's Unity 7 video.
Wow. Did you go there, Dave?
I heard about it somewhere and I went hunting for it and never really found it. But the only real issue I had with it was the same one that Joe had when I was using it in VirtualBox. The XFCE version didn't scale automatically, and I had to jank around installing the guest editions 6 ways from sideways to get it to work. Otherwise, it worked real nice. I tried very diligently to use it the way it was supposed to be used, and lasted about 10 minutes, and doing everything through the GUI just drove me nuts, and I dropped into the command line again, and it ended up... It's really solid, but it's the same as any other Ubuntu base for me. And when you're looking at it from the command line, they all look pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
You're right, Dave. When I did the guest editions, it still wouldn't size up for me. It wouldn't give me the options. So
it actually did for me, but I had to tweak around with the settings and then go into the extra drivers that they had and put in the guest editions DKMS drivers modules for the kernel. And then when I shut it down and started it up again, then it would resize.
Yeah, but to me, I figured you could probably do something like that, but at the same token, I thought, why should you have to? You know, you shouldn't have to work that hard to do. And 19 itself didn't do that. 19.1 does. I don't know what the difference is.
Don't know. The other thing I noticed was that it would naturally scale to whatever size I last had the window at. So if I had it full screen, when I opened it up again, it would be full screen. If I had it, down to about a quarter of the screen, the next time I started it up, it would start at that same size, quarter size. It didn't automatically. It just automatically went back into whatever size I had it in when I shut it down.
Weird. We find some weird issues. You know that? All of us do. It's not just me. Okay.
No, your issue is just 1 pixel off all the time.
Yeah.
Once I got the sizing, working that way, I actually appreciated that it would start back up the same way I had left it.
Right. Yeah.
So that it didn't automatically take over my whole screen every time I started it.
That also has to do with whether the software, that application allows that to do that on startup. In the window display parameters. So if they program it right, it should. Not Mint. I'm saying just in general.
Right, and I think in VirtualBox it also depends on what video driver.
Yeah.
Because you have a choice of like 4, and it. To get it to scale properly, I had to switch from whatever was the default to the VM SVGA. driver, display driver.
Yeah, see, I tried switching those around. I still couldn't get no avail. I don't know what the deal was.
All right, moving on, Mr. Matt. I'm sure you took Linux Mint for a whole week's worth of distro spinning.
Oh, you know I did. Yeah, that last part. Like a lot of people have said, I like Linux Mint. I like Cinnamon. There are just a few lingering issues that they still need to fix, at least in my case anyway. This is just my experience with the scaling. I hate the fact that I have to individually go in and scale the font to a higher in order for that to work. Then you have to change the panel. Then you have to change the icons. Then you have to change. Whereas, just give me a slider and it changes all the stuff. I have yet to find a distro or a DE that does it at least better than Unity or even Plasma.
There's none better than Unity.
As far as scaling, you are
as far as scaling goes. In that regard, there's none better than Unity.
The only one that comes close is KDE, in my opinion, and that's still got some issues.
Got some major issues.
Yeah, text and that stuff. But anyway, the things
and
I like,
window borders and stuff.
Yeah, but the things I liked about Cinnamon, like everybody else says, it's stable, it works. I like the fact that they got rid of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system in the updater, which was annoying. Oh, we're not going to give you kernel updates. I never understood it. As far as people transitioning to Linux, it'd probably be the distro I'd give somebody. As far as for me, it's not for me, just because of those issues with scaling that I have on the particular machine I use it on. Other than that, would I use it? Probably not. It's just not meant for me. But for those that it's meant for, awesome.
What aspect ratio is that machine that you're using? Is it a 4:3 or a 16:10?
It's definitely something goofy if it's Matt's.
No.
I'm just
wow.
saying.
No,
Am I wrong?
That's besides the point. No, it's a 16 by 9, 1920 by 1080. But it's on a 11.6 inch screen.
So that's a hard one.
So I do need certain amount of scaling in order to expand it. And unfortunately, Cinnamon does not do that without having to mess with independent layers of the UI, which is annoying. So that's why I'm more of a, just give me a slider. So that's why usually I default back to Unity on most of my installs, because it just has that.
Come on, pencil.
Can I interrupt now?
Yeah.
We only got 20 minutes left, Joe. Okay.
Option for switching buttons right to left, because I just loaded it in the VM. I found it in the control center under Windows, and then all the way to the right is placement. The funny thing is when I initially did the changeover, actually it's under general, excuse me. It said right or left like Mac. I clicked left like Mac, it moved them over. Now, all there is a right and left option, but it is, in fact, in Mate.
It is.
Yes.
Because I couldn't find it, so I don't know where you
it's in a weird place. You got to go into look and feel, go under Windows, and then under general is where it's at.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that, but I was on a mission to find it for our dear Barbara.
Thank you. That would be something you wouldn't expect to have to burrow down that far.
Yeah.
It should have been just where, like with Mate, where in every other distro, they keep it,
right.
Keep that the same.
Yeah, but it's there.
So it's, okay, so it is there. Okay, I take back my comment then.
All right, Adam, do you want to make a comment on Linux Mint or no?
Yeah, so I've been using this, and I like the fact that they're more environmentally cautious, because the trash is called recycle bin, and they added these like live tiles to the menu, and they have like some voice assistant on there. Oh,
wait, are we talking about Linux Mint here?
I actually, I don't think I am.
No, I don't think you are.
Okay, well,
it's a few distros back.
It's close,
or a few distros over.
Yeah. No, I like Linux Mint. It's fine. I've actually used it for about a year during the 18 cycle, and I didn't see too much of a difference between 18 and 19, but other than 1804. But I don't know, it's okay. It like everybody says, it's boring, but in a way that's good, because if you're going to give it to somebody who doesn't necessarily know Linux, or isn't, even if they're not necessarily comfortable with computing, Like it's great that everything is not that exciting. They can just get their work done and open up a browser, open up the programs they need, and move on. Yeah, there are little things that you guys have brought up. I guess my use cases don't generally drill into. I'm a very defaults kind of guy. Like if whatever the default is, I generally just roll with that. I don't really mess with customization too much. But yeah, I mean, I think Linux Mint's great. Actually, I actually think they produce one of the greatest experiences in Linux, like an all around like total package experience. But that's just me.
Dig it.
Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah, howdy everybody. Just most of you probably already know I've been using Linux Mint for 3 or 4 years.
So you're not biased at all?
Nah. But I try them all. Generally speaking, whenever I install a Linux distro on a customer's computer or laptop, it's just basically what works best because there is a lot of compatibility issue with hardware. So Linux Mint 18.3 is what's running on my desktop right now, Sylvia. It's got the 415 kernel. I'm running 32 gigs of RAM, so I don't have to worry about swappiness or anything like that. It's always worked pretty flawlessly for me on the desktop. But then I went ahead and downloaded 19.1 and put it on this 2005 laptop, my G71 test bed. It runs about 750 megabytes of resources or memory as it sits right now. I got glances running. I don't have any issues on such an old machine as well, which I expected to run into some trouble with it, some issues. It's only 4 gigs of RAM, but it's only using 750. CPU load is extremely low. It's running 146 tasks. 168 services are loaded and running. CPU's, like I say, is running about 2.8%. I mean, it's not being tasked with a whole lot, but for such an old machine and such old hardware, it's really running well. Put my panel on the left, so I got plenty of screen room. And for anybody that was going to do a distro for the first time, and this is Mate, sorry, I'm in Australia, Mate. It's really easy to get used to a distro by using Linux Mint, I think. Everything is very easy to find. It doesn't take very long to figure anything out or to find much, except for Barbara's issue of buttons. But I think that's a little.
That's a nit.
Yeah, that's a little further down the road for anybody that's trying something for the first time. They're probably not going to be too concerned about where their buttons are at. So
yeah, I think the only if they were coming from a Mac, they would be, because you can't put the buttons anywhere except on the left on the Mac.
I just put a message in the Zoom chat too, and it's actually in 2 locations.
Oh,
that's why I could find it the second time. Weird how they did that. That's why one says Mac style, and then when you go into the other, okay. So if you read that, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I'd have to give this one Linux Mint and being unbiased, ease of use, newbie friendly. I think it's really nice and smooth and easy setup.
Very nice. MV Michael Vash, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can. What's going on?
Awesome. So this is going to be a unique perspective. So I distro hopped about 2 months ago from Windows 10 to Linux Mint 19, and then
Just
I
2 months
upgraded.
ago.
Yes, it's been about 2 months. I ran it on an external hard drive for a while just to make sure there was nothing I was going to be needing from Windows 10, and I think I logged in like twice during that time just to get a password or a link or something like that I needed, and eventually I ended up trying a couple other things as far as distros, but ended up coming back to Linux Mint because I think Cubicle Nate and I were battling tumbleweed tumbleweed NVIDIA drivers. That was not interesting, but we tried, but we just could not get it to click. And I imagine ultimately I will end up going a different direction. In the end, once I really kind of get into Linux, but for going into it, I really think intuitive that Joe was saying earlier is the word, because I was quickly able to start tinkering around and changing things, and all the simple things that I Linux user can do that a Windows user maybe cannot do in some cases. So I was quickly able to get all that figured out, and if I couldn't, then obviously Google's out there. But I think the intuitiveness is really kind of what's clicked for me so far, and the fact that I didn't have to battle NVIDIA drivers was nice too.
Yeah, I agree. That's
nothing wrong with battling your computer.
You like a challenge, right, Nate?
I do. Head on.
And to be fair, I usually do too, but my problem is I can't use the external monitor, so I'm looking at this tiny laptop screen, and after a while, I just get sick of looking at the tiny laptop screen. But I'm always up for a good technology challenge to figure out what's going on, and otherwise I don't think I'd really be looking Linux, and using it like I am now. But it's just one of those deals where after I could only deal with that so long before it's like, well, I need to actually be able to use my computer again, and I can only do so with an external monitor.
Right.
I wish I could get my hands on that laptop, actually. I'd like to play with it.
That's one thing I've got to give the benefit to with just anything Ubuntu and Ubuntu based is that the driver situation is just amazing out of the box.
Good.
They really have that down.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll give them that.
All right. Moving on. We're going to skip Barb because she already doesn't like the right-handed window buttons.
No, but the rest of it I actually really did. I found I could see introducing a new user of Linux using Linux Mint. That was just my little nit. Other than that,
she
everything
does
worked.
like it now because I found 2 options for her in there.
Yeah, then now I'm a happy camper.
See, now you got to reinstall it.
Yeah, or try it again at least.
All right.
Speaking of that, I guarantee it wasn't installed. It was just a live.
You're right.
Oh, okay.
And
What did you say, Michael?
Speaking of that, really quick, my parents are running this old laptop, and it's running Windows 8. So I took a live USB stick the last time I was out there, and just ran Mint on there, and just could you guys use this? And it was running really fast compared to Windows 8, even on this whatever the USB port was on that laptop. I don't know if it was a 2 or 3, but the USB stick was really old. But it was even running fine there. So I think at some point I'm gonna install that for them so they can just use Linux Mint on that laptop. So
nice.
Definitely love the conversion. Love it. All right, Thomas, you are up, sir. Linux Mint.
Alrighty, Linux Mint. So I used Linux Mint a while back. I ended up distro hopping to it from Ubuntu 16.04, and I used Linux Mint 18.3 for quite a while. And I've always felt that it's very stable. I hate Cinnamon. For the life of me, I do not like its workflow, but everything else about Linux Mint I just love. And going to trying out Linux Mint 19 this week, because of that, I decided not to try Cinnamon since I've tried it before, and I didn't try the XFCE version since I run XFCE every day. So at least Mate, since I figured I haven't used Mate in 2-3 years, so I figured why not get my feet wet with it again. And overall, the only issue I had with it is the only button you have on your Windows out of the box is the close button. So I had to go find the minimize and maximize buttons. But once I did that, it was perfectly fine. I know Mate is pretty configurable, so I could very easily get it configured to the way I like it without having to change too much. So, yeah, although I didn't get to try it very much, because I ended up installing CentOS, and we're not going to talk about how much I hated that.
We might actually bring that up if we have time. So we'll see.
Okay. But overall, I really do love Linux Mint in general. my father is barely technology literate, barely. And I talked him into buying a new laptop recently. And as soon as he got it, I immediately pulled out his hard drive and put in his old hard drive that I had installed Linux Mint onto. Because not only did I know that I could help him with it if it broke, but I also knew he wouldn't be able to get a virus with it. And because I had that Linux Mint installation already configured out of the box using Linux Mint's built-in themes, I didn't have to go install too many things. I was able to get it looking like what he was used to already. So every time I have somebody who's talking to me about Linux and talking about maybe I'll switch, I tell them, go to Linux Mint. It's the most stable distro out there that's both Ubuntu based that I can help you with because I know it really well and is similar to Windows. And it has higher performance than Zorin OS. So overall, 19, just another great release for another great distro.
Very nice. Climby, let me guess, you tried all 3 versions of Linux Mint, right?
Okay. Unfortunately, I just did the Cinnamon. I was going to do the XFCE on the Transformer book. I just got busy, so I couldn't do that one. But the Cinnamon one worked great. I did have the same issue, actually, with the disappearing Windows when I first installed it. When I would drag it from my laptop screen to my external display, it was a weird, the same, like it would disappear at first, but then if you click on the title bar, it comes back. But those issues went away after I installed the NVIDIA driver. So I'm not sure what was going on with that. But yeah, I installed the latest NVIDIA driver and it started working fine. Besides that, I really like some of the improvements they're making to like Nemo and the update managers we've talked about. I like the little kernel selector thing they've got, although I wish they would add a little bit more to that because right now they just have the Ubuntu supported kernels like the 4.15 and the 4.18. But yeah, and I can't really say anything negative about it. It's solid, and Cinnamon seems to be getting better for the most part. I like the new like look, how it looks a little bit more modern with the icons down below, kind of like the Windows 7-ish look. But yeah, and we talked about the customization options. Overall, I think Cinnamon's getting really solid, and yeah, I really enjoy the Linux Mint.
Nice.
Just a quick question, Clammy. What graphics card do you use?
It's a 680M mobile.
Right, okay, because Anselm in chat has got a 1070 Ti like me, and he has exactly the same problems, even after we've installed NVIDIA. But if I'm honest with you, I think this only started occurring on 4.15, so I might go back and install the 4.10 drivers and see if that cures it across the board.
Interesting.
Sounds like wait a minute, Zeb, you said kernel, or are you talking graphics card?
No, graphics card.
Yeah, 4.15 is still a beta, so.
But it's available in the NVIDIA PPA, so they shouldn't.
Yeah, I know that because it keeps showing up in mine. But before I didn't install it yet purposely because I went to NVIDIA's site to check, and it is still in beta format, so there might still be some issues there.
But the frustrating thing is it works on every single other desktop other than Cinnamon.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, Nate, you got some positive for us?
Yeah, I have quite a bit of positive. Although I realize I didn't write very much of it in my article. But what I will say is the theme. Once you make it dark, get rid of all the light nonsense. I think it looks top notch. That, and also it's dark and green, and that's very OpenSUSE-ish. So in my book. See, I think Kermit's wrong. I think it is easy being green, and I like it. So, now, I will say I think Cinnamon looks real nice. I think anyone who says that Cinnamon they don't like Cinnamon, I really don't understand why. To me, it's very nice. I mean, I don't have anything bad about it. I mean, it feels a little bit on the plain side. It's no offense to anybody who doesn't like it, Tom. But it's very approachable, I think, for new users. I think that's been iterated many times. But if I have someone who I can help locally, I'll actually push them toward OpenSUSE. But someone who I can't help locally, I can see myself pushing them toward Linux Mint and not feel bad about it at all. I think that would be an easy way to go. And the reason I say that, my justification is that welcome screen. That pretty much gives you the rundown to everything you need to worry about right out of the gate. I mean, there really is. I mean, if you can read even a little bit at the 8th grade level, I think that you can run Linux Mint no problem. And that isn't disparaging against anyone below the 8th grade level. I was just saying. Yeah. Now, what I don't care for as much about Linux Mint is it automatically booted from the media, and that annoys me. Now I see that there's utility in that, especially for new user, but that just annoys me. I see that it's pretty common. The other thing is the updater. I had to re-authenticate a few times just to update, and I didn't understand that. And maybe that was just happened to me because I'm a strange case. But that I thought it was annoying. It's just a paper cut issue. It was really minor. I mean, not a big deal. Better safe than sorry. I'd rather over-authenticate than under-authenticate. So that was one thing. The default partitioning, it just did one giant partition, and I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. So I don't really care for that. But although I was really excited to see in the system snapshot, they had a ButterFS option, because I actually think that everyone else is wrong and ButterFS is pretty decent. It wasn't, even though it was an option when I went to do snapshots. Had I paid attention when I installed Mint, I probably could have had ButterFS, but it wasn't there. So outside of that, no, I think Linux Mint is great, and those are actually really all nitpicky issues. So, could I use it full time? I don't know what my problem is. I mean, it hits all the points. Like, I should like it. I should actually like to use it, but something just, I don't know. I can't put my thumb on it, but it just wasn't. It wasn't. Just something doesn't click. I don't know.
You bring up some good points though in regards to two things that I picked up on with the over authentication thing. I have noticed that, like, if certain operations take too long, like between when it starts doing one thing and it starts doing another, it doesn't keep
Time's
like
out.
the same thing. Yeah, so it'll just have to do it again.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I think there's timeout settings in there somewhere. I thought I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I think it's like there's like a little user authentication key thingy that you can configure now. I forget what the actual term for it is, but
Ubuntu does that anyway.
Yeah.
I know with Mate it does.
Yeah, I've had that. I think it's called PaulKit, actually.
Most distros do, but I know on Arch it usually defaults to 15 minutes.
Oh, that's a long time.
So in OpenSUSE, if I have when I'm in that session with doing updates or anything with software management, once I'm there, and I don't have, until I jump out of that, I don't have to authenticate again. So it's like once I open that portal's open. So maybe it's a difference between SU versus sudo or something like that. I don't know.
I know, like, so when I'm running things in root, there's 3 different ways I typically run them. And there's pk execute, where just that command will run in root. And that's what I'm typically going to use if I know I'm not going to have to do a lot on root, because it's more secure to do that. Because it's just that one command that's running. Now, there may be some other reason where it's not, but, and it typically is on every single distro I've had. Then there's sudo, which on my system leaves that sort of portal open for like 20 minutes. And then su, which, opens that up, and then I have to hit exit to get out of it.
That one kicks the door open. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned was with the ButterFS. I actually haven't ever seen. I'll stop tapping my mouse. I haven't ever actually seen the settings in there to configure snapshots and whatnot. But you are right. By default, there's no just little check to install with ButterFS in the installer for Mint. So I think you'd have to manually partition it and then set it to ButterFS, and then that might be an option. So it'd be nice to see if they had a checkbox for that in the installer.
And ButterFS would be nice if it weren't for the fact that all the ZFS implementations are rebasing on ZFS for Linux.
ButterFS works great in OpenSUSE, so I don't know, but maybe everyone else.
Wow,
that could be. I've been using it quite happily for since they started. So that's probably what, 4 years now. I've never had any.
Until now, yeah, ButterFS was the best choice on Linux because ZFS wasn't really set for it. But now they're actually rebasing all the ZFSs on ZFS for Linux because the Linux team has got a lot of tweaks in it that the others want.
Right. I think momentum is the word you're looking for.
Yes.
Well, I know, but there's some licensing issues, I guess, still, and I think OpenSUSE is very particular about what they, for the legal reasons, what they use, and they don't play around too close to those lines.
For me, it's always been
that's part of the reason. The legal issues are part of the reason that they're also part of the reason that they're rebasing it on ZFS for Linux instead of the BSD version. So everybody is rebasing on Linux's ZFS version.
Well, this should be interesting, huh?
Linux has a habit of being on top. Yeah.
All right.
Marco,
Yo.
I mentioned running the Linux Mint Facebook group for years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've all talked about Linux Mint being great for brand new users, and that's absolutely true. But I've actually had the privilege, and I've just been thinking about all the people I've seen over the years who started with Linux Mint, who actually learned a lot, really grew in their Linux knowledge. Most of them did move on to other distros, but Linux Mint was their training ground.
Yep. I agree. Well, I mean, for years, it's been the go-to one that you would recommend to anybody coming over new.
Yes.
Like, I mean, most people will say, you know, what do you give to a new user? Linux Mint. I mean, there's other ones like Ubuntu Mate you probably could give to new users.
Yes.
Maybe MX. But yeah, Linux Mint has been the overall king in, you know, if I'm going to give a new user something, it's going to be Linux Mint.
But it's also great for advanced users if they want to stay with it.
It can be, but I think most advanced users, like it's,
I
would go with, I would go with what I think it was Nate. You said there's something like you almost feel like you almost feel like you shouldn't be using Linux Mint.
It's like they're missing a little chameleon mascot.
That's what Solus is for.
That would be helpful.
It's got the analogy of the distro with the training wheels, and that's almost how you feel. So you feel almost like you have training wheels on when you're using Linux Mint. So I don't know. That's just maybe it's just me.
That's basically saying it's easy to use. I mean,
it's easy to use. Yeah, it is.
Mate out of the box for most people, if you're coming over from Windows, they might look at it as strange because you got a top and bottom taskbar and the menu's up in the top left corner. You know, by default out of the box. Yes, you could customize it. Where Mint out of the gate, especially Cinnamon, looks more Windows-esque because the menu's on the bottom on the left.
Yes, but you could. I mean, if you're going to give it to a new user, you're going to set it up for them. So you would probably switch that to the layout that looks more like Windows.
Right.
If you're using Mate. So.
And I think that's part of the problem with people like us when we use something like Mint. It makes us feel almost like we're back in Windows because everything is just there and working.
Yeah.
Our spidey sense start tingling.
Yes, it does.
I don't know
very much so.
I'm with Nate though. I just don't know why I can't use it. I just can't.
But
the
see, that's the good thing though.
Didn't stay with it.
What was that?
The only reason I didn't stay with it is because I couldn't open images in GIMP without the entire desktop session crashing.
Oh, wow.
Everything else was actually perfect for me, except for that one issue. I couldn't get any logs out of it because it wouldn't produce anything. The session would just hang. GIMP wouldn't have any errors. Cinnamon would produce no errors. I installed all the debug packages, nothing. It was just silent.
But that's like you said, Seb, and like Nate said, you know, for people that have been using Linux for a while. Now, not to say that everybody's like that, because obviously Mathias and a couple others use Linux Mint on a daily basis. But most people who have used Linux for a while are going to gravitate to something else. But yet, Linux Mint plays a great part in the overall Linux community by being there as that rock-solid distro that you can hand to people and introduce them to Linux. and like you said, Peter, have them learn and be a training ground for going, but it's usually going to something else.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And-
well, yeah. Sure.
But in
And you can also
fairness,
say-
it looks better. 19, especially Cinnamon now, has a much better look to it than it used to. I think, it tended to have a little bit of a, I hate to use this word, but ugliness to it at a point because it got old. And I hate to say that about Mate.
XPS.
Mate's the same way. Mate hasn't really refreshed in who knows how long.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking just now. I feel like it's the Honda Accord of Linux's Linux guy.
But you know what the problem with all of us are? It's like working on a car. The first thing you want to do is get under the hood.
Yeah, I can't stick a plow on my Honda Civic, but or Honda Accord, whatever. But I can a truck, and I feel like maybe I want a truck. I think that might be it. I don't know. I can't.
I think we're also coming from a point, as everyone keeps saying, we have so much more experience. But if you're looking at it as a user, I think it's perfectly marvelous, and it takes that fear of Linux away.
Yeah, it's a perfect.
And that's what you have to look at. 95% of the people don't do what we do. They don't tear the thing apart.
Or even care.
And I'm sorry, I still think Mint is more favorable over the Ubuntu with the known desktop.
Yes. Oh, I agree with that.
I would say so.
I think that's going to intimidate somebody more.
Let's close Linux Mint out for this because we're running a little long.
Oh, yeah.
So Big Pod, welcome to Biddle, sir.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't really check Mint on real hardware, but I did do, as it was released, a bit of a check on how it is in the latest version, and I found it useful and works especially for new users, but Cinnamon doesn't suit me, and I'm still using other Linuxes, but to new user I would share one of the first options to show them.
Yep, I agree. Well, I did try out Linux Mint, and the welcome screen has improved so much over the years because originally the welcome screen was nothing but a bunch of links, and it pretty much has everything you need to start customizing the system. But I will say, Colin, that what you said about the time shift, that thing pops up constantly with the message to offer you to do snapshots, and there should be just an easy checkbox there to say, don't show me this again. Because, I could try to go search the internet to find out how to turn that off, but why should I have to?
No, that's right.
You shouldn't
You can turn it off.
me.
You can turn it off
very easily as well.
Yeah,
in
there
the
should just be
preferences.
like a "Don't remind me again" button.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. Yep.
Yep. So that was kind of annoying, but Snap, I don't know if you guys checked or not, but although it offered, Snapd was not installed by default for me.
Same
Correct.
here.
Same.
And I'm not sure why.
Because they went to the effort of removing that and specifically putting in Flatpak, even though Snapd was supported on that platform.
Yeah.
And flatpaks in the software center.
Yeah, flatpaks are.
I remember reading that actually.
Again,
someplace.
why?
Yeah,
I have no
If
idea.
anything, decided to go with Flatpaks. That's mainly the thing.
If anything, if your distro supports both, why not just go ahead and have both put in there by default, unless for some odd reason it violates some sort of like ethos or whatever that your distro is supposed to be following.
Right, even if you don't have it integrated into the software center, at least having the Snapd in there is
Yeah.
kind of
You
sensible.
need to rip it out.
Because then at least you're more advanced users if they do use Linux Mint. Because personally, if I need something in a hurry that I know is going to be stable, I'm going to grab Linux Mint. If they're going to use it, at least they have Snapd in there by default, so they can go in through the terminal because they're going to at some point.
Yeah, but it's a 2-second install. It's like Nate said, it's little paper cuts that add up to something that makes it, just can't use it.
Yeah, but we have to think that normal people don't really know what they're doing and what they're installing. So they will look on the internet. They will see Snap because it's Ubuntu based. They will think it works the same as Ubuntu. They will try to install using Snap. It won't work.
Right.
That's
Very good point.
That's the problem
Yeah.
I'm facing with this Snap not being installed.
Well, but the thing is, if you do try to install Snap without Snapd, it literally pops up and says you can install Snapd. I mean, it's right there in the error message.
That's why I knew that Snapd wasn't installed. I couldn't believe it. I was like,
That
wow.
is if you do it through the terminal, though. Like if you just actually, you can't go through the website UI route.
I got you.
I just wanted to mention something I forgot earlier because Zeb mentioned the paper cuts and whatnot. Also on the welcome screen, Rocco, that you mentioned is the Hex chat. And there is a huge community support in spotchat.org. And as soon as you hit that Hex chat, you're logged right into the Linux Mint help channel. And there is a huge group of really helpful, intelligent guys there and girls that will help anybody with anything that they have issues with in Linux Mint, which I didn't notice that in any other kind of distros, actually.
Right.
Yeah, they did a good job of having that configured by default. And I think they just take like the system username that you use and try and like plug that into the IRC config, which it does pretty well most of the time. It seems to be pretty decent.
Well, there was something in the release notes that last week that I mentioned, the fact that they said Nemo is 3 times faster. Did anybody notice that it was 3 times faster?
I've noticed.
Well, it is a lot faster. Yeah, it is pretty quick. Yeah.
Copying about 300 gigabytes of data in like small files from like one drive to another was way more seamless. Like it used to like glitch and bug out, and now it was just you could just watch it.
Good.
Yeah, that's right. But one thing I haven't, if I can, Rocco, just
Go
one
ahead.
thing. I didn't mention the X app preferences that they've done to make Linux Mint look so consistent across the board now. Whenever you go into a lot of their apps, they've got the sidebar now as the preferences, and that's very much all consistent and gives a very cohesive experience across the board in Linux Mint. So that's a really, really nice touch.
That is what makes it boring. I mean, that is what makes it. But going back to what Matt said, the scaling, Matt, I did find the scaling option, but it was like buried in the general preferences, like in the settings, like, and like way down at the bottom, there's a general topic, and it's like buried in there. And it's like, I mean, it doesn't offer fractional scaling. I mean, it offers double, and that's it. But it did actually work.
And right there would be my issue.
But like, it should not be buried down there. It should be somewhere else in the display.
It should be in I was going to say, it should be either in your appearance or your display or your window, like somewhere.
Yes.
sane.
Yep, somewhere sane. And I was able to install an extension that made the panel transparent, which makes it look really nice.
Nice.
Cinnamon to me was always a favorite of mine. So I really enjoyed it, although I didn't use it all week because I got hooked on something else. But no, Linux Mint is a pretty awesome distro, and whether I like it or not, whether it's something that is something I'm going to run every week, I definitely appreciate it being there for what it's there for.
Yeah,
and that's to be a stable Linux that people can go to, that the first distro you hand them doesn't just fall off its wheels and crash.
I like how you dodged that bullet, Rocco.
I don't know what you're talking about. We gotta move on.
So I think we can surmise that it's a nice, clean desktop environment, unlike the super chat that's been going on in.
Yeah, that super chat. That was Ansem. That was hilarious. First chat for the Razor Fund. That was hilarious. But I do want to mention our good friend Nate. Is on the voting for OpenSUSE member board, right, Nate?
That's correct.
And what is this all about? Like, what are you trying to become?
A board member for the OpenSUSE project.
That's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah. I realize that I'm on that list. There's 6 people running right now. I realize I'm technically the least proficient which is why I document everything. So that's what I'm good at. But I know that they're all way smarter than I am.
If you want to put a link in the Zoom chat for me, Nate, because I don't have it on me, I'll put it out on the YouTube chat. That way they can actually see it. But sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just saying he is smarter than the rest of them.
Well, it's not, I
don't know about that.
Nate, you had made that comment that you are, the least proficient out of all of those. But
Technically
like I told
least proficient, yes.
Yeah, like I said, that is not always the most important thing that you need on that situation. You have such a passion for OpenSUSE that it just oozes out of you, and everybody around you can tell. And I think that is an awesome feature to have, and I wish you the best of luck with the voting, dude.
Yeah,
we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. It gets my name out there, and really, I just want to do a better job of documenting certain things. So when people build stuff or do things with OpenSUSE, that it's easier to get to the solution. Like the NVIDIA drivers that somebody, Mr. Michael Vash, was having. I'm not an open. I don't have a whole lot of NVIDIA experience. My experience is limited, and maybe had the documentation been better, it might have worked better for him.
But Nate, one of the things you have to keep in mind, and this has always been my outlook for things, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have somebody that's newer, maybe a little bit less experienced coming into something, because it's a fresh pair of eyes. It's an untainted mind, if you will.
Mine's pretty tainted, though, I would say.
But no, I mean by you get used to something, you tend to get it. I think. Let me compare it to the building industry. They used to use a phrase called the "good old boys club." Where guys get so settled in their ways, you can't tell them anything different. They don't want to hear something from a new pair of eyes or a fresh outlook in something. And to me, I think going in there with maybe looking at and seeing things that others wouldn't, because you are passionate to learn or dig in deeper or go after you know what I'm saying? I think sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing,
Yeah. Completely
Especially when you're going up against a bunch of sysadmins who are very business focused.
Yes.
Instead of normal user focused.
Throw some pop culture references at him and confuse him.
But it confused me because I couldn't find you in the list, Nate. Why are you not using Future Boy? That's such a good handle.
So I own a DeLorean, and I'm also Back to the Future junkie. And
I love that.
That's a great handle.
I'm not a boy anymore. I'm kind of an old man, so it doesn't seem fitting anymore.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It sounds good.
So, call yourself Future Grumpy.
That'd work.
And you can always go back to being the Future Boy.
Yeah.
That's right.
There you go, Zeb.
There you go. Good one, Zeb.
I'm closer to Doc Brown than I am Marty at this stage. So now I can just shout, "Marty, come back with me!" Whenever.
I don't think Marty was all that young when he made the film anyway. So there you go.
1.21 gigawatts of memory being used.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck, Nate.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We'll see how it goes. It's a win-win, regardless. I don't see it as a loss, even if I don't win. So.
Yep. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
All right, Zeb. You said you want to elaborate on a comment, and I don't know if you remember what it was before when we first started. If not, we'll move on.
CentOS or like server?
Well, we're getting to that, but it was something you wanted to talk about, and I forget what it was.
Yeah, no, and I've completely forgotten now as well. So unlike Nate, I am getting old now. So.
All right, moving on. Dan, you had a reason why you couldn't try Linux Mint as much this week as you normally would.
Yeah, been a little busy. I got some new hardware. Long time coming for me. So I got a new Ryzen build, and I've been playing around with that. Been super fun. It's really nice, super smooth.
Nice. What's the Ryzen?
So I got the 2700X, the Ryzen 7. Yep, and 32 gig of RAM.
Whoa.
And
bulking up there.
That's nice.
Yep. And the Samsung 970 NVMe drive.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
You got a snappy system there.
And
Yeah,
did
it's
you
great.
say Vega 64 in there somewhere?
All right, so I'm using an older video card right now. It is an AMD card, but I don't know what I'm gonna get. I'm on the fence still. That's why I didn't buy it.
My
I mean-
1080 Ti works real nice with an Ryzen 2700X.
I'm sorry.
2060 when it gets more perfect.
I'm on the fence because the 2060 actually looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Actually,
Really good.
what I would suggest is don't get, if you're going to get a 2080 or 2060, do not get anything with that ray tracing until you get a 5 series kernel, because when you get the 5 series kernel, that's when they'll start supporting ray tracing. Otherwise, you just got a feature you just can't use. Otherwise,
yeah, but it'll be there.
It'll be there.
Yeah, it'll be there when he finally gets to the 5
If
series
it's not
kernels.
broken.
Yeah, true. But I was going to say, AMD actually at CES this week was showing off what they were going to use to compete with the RTX lineup. And it's looking really nice based on the video from Linus Tech Tips.
Did they just like mount some lasers on the side of the graphics card?
Yes, but I'm sorry, but I gotta say, and I'm not saying this because people consider me a NVIDIA fanboy, but AMD has may be good on the processor end of it, but their video cards have not been what they claim to have been. I mean, the Vega 64 was was put out there to be the 1080 killer.
Oh yeah, they are not gaming powerhouses.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely was not,
Yeah.
and it didn't compare at all. And regardless of what they show at CES, as far as what they're going to compare with the RTX, I don't have any faith in that till I actually see it.
Well, I think the reason that AMD is pushing it so hard is that when you get into the ray tracing and that stuff, it's much more computational than graphics driven, and that's where AMD really has its strength. NVIDIA is very graphics focused. They will mop the floor with AMD in the graphics. But when you get into ray tracing, which is more computational, AMD really starts shining because that's where their strength is.
This is true.
But it was really interesting this week. I think the CEO of NVIDIA shot some huge bombs across the bow, and he was just slating them left, right, and center. And he didn't just slate AMD either. He had a huge dig at Intel. So if you want a bit of fun, it's quite a long article, but go and find NVIDIA's CEO, and wow, that was a broad shot.
Watch the video of it.
Yeah, but you know why that is too, Zeb, is because NVIDIA sat up on their throne for so long, and now they've got somebody threatening to knock them off it. And they may not be there yet, but they're coming there.
First step, Joe, I'm sorry. I mean, everybody keeps saying I had a bad Vega 64. I didn't. It was a Vega 64, and it was nowhere near as good as my 1060. And my 1070 Ti just blows it out of the water. Sorry. Graphics cards aren't there yet.
No, I'm not denying that. I think that there are ways coming yet. But they have, if you look at, much like Linux, you look at back where they were 5 to 10 years ago to where they're at now, they've come leaps and bounds. Look at they were in so much trouble that not that long ago that they thought that company wasn't even going to be around. And then all of a sudden they came out with the Ryzen processors, and so they're driven to do better. And I guess that's my point is they're still don't hold a candle in many ways to NVIDIA for gaming, but they're climbing, they're getting there, and they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, but here's the thing though with that. You're talking about Ryzen though, and NVIDIA has nothing to do with the processor end of it.
Yeah.
So you can only compare AMD to NVIDIA in the graphics section. And in that graphics section, they're not even close.
At the end of the
day,
I
get
my
that.
decision was made on drivers, and I went with a company that has drivers that Linus was able to audit.
And that was my point. I mean, I threw Ryzen as an example, but Ryzen, I'm talking about even with the CPU market, the whole company was in trouble. So I'm talking, graphics is graphics, but their graphics is even accelerated from what it used to be to where it is now. It's still not where we need it to be, but
yes,
it's getting there.
it's accelerated to staying behind NVIDIA, just like it's always has
Okay.
been.
Another 4 or 5 years. I
We're a year from now.
Closer on their coattails.
Can put more bet
So
on
you got some serious choices to make, Dan, because that new AMD looks good, but no one's really had their fingers on it yet. So not even Phoronix.
Yeah,
we're going to have to wait until the market starts fluctuating.
Physical tests.
Yep.
It's a bit like Intel
by
when
AMD.
they brought out their 9900 and said, "Yay, we can do 5 gigahertz." No, you can't.
Intel's got some interesting things going for it in the graphics department. Like they have integrated graphics, but they've always been kind of they've recently been mostly garbage. But they've started working on like dedicated cards, and I'm not sure really whether they're going to be targeted in any way, shape, or form towards gaming whatsoever. It's probably going to be more workstation stuff.
Right.
But I feel like the only reason they're doing it is because people were like, remember this old Intel graphics card? And then Intel was like, you remember that?
Probably just for computing.
Well, Dan, this
Probably
machine,
server stuff.
Yeah.
this machine, is it something that you're going to put another hard drive in and use as a test thing, or are you just going to keep one thing on it?
No, probably not.
Get an icy dock.
Well, the reason I'm asking is it's probably a good test for a lot of distros to see how it reacts to that. So,
Yep. Yeah, it'll be exciting.
I would highly suggest an icy dock.
Yeah, I'll probably get an icy dock and a couple of SSDs to go with it.
Yep, the 120 gig SSDs make great testing beds for distros.
Absolutely.
What I use on the system.
yeah, and you can pretty much get them for like $20 now.
I know.
Yeah.
So.
Kingston,
yeah, they've got some great stuff.
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of those in a couple of different laptops. The 240s or something like that. So they've been rock solid. No complaints.
Yeah, now 120 might get
Exactly, Zeb.
Windows 10 because you wouldn't have much drive left when you're done with it.
Yeah.
Now Zeb's got an icy dock. He's probably willing to sell you.
I'll sell you once I rip my drives out that I can't actually get out. I'll sell you my icy dock.
It's kind of one of the worrying things about SSDs, though, is like they're getting better and better and better, but now they're starting to get worse and worse. We're being able to cram more and more capacity into smaller spaces, but we're starting to use technologies that are like more and more cell units, and that means that they're going to start degrading faster once again.
Yes,
and they're going to have worse performance in the long run. So they're going to
your
have
cell information bleeds over.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe let's try and shift this towards the other direction because we're starting to revert back to our previous issue.
Yeah, but the problem is that the price gets so much higher if we go single cell.
Yeah,
and capacity for size gets a lot bigger.
You can only shrink so much.
Capacity for same size, physical size.
Yeah.
I've got a great tool for you though for the ice.
No lies, Zeb. No lies, Zeb. That would not work. I'm sorry. I tried pretty much everything with that.
Have you tried a hammer, Rocco?
Did it?
I got my 4 SSDs out, so it works.
All right. Well, then I'll have to try it again. I must not have had a pure needle nose pliers there, but I had to take it apart, completely apart.
A pipe wrench.
I could, but it might not work.
Cover it in peanut butter and then let the dogs get to it.
C4.
All right. So, Thomas, you brought up a situation with CentOS, and I don't know if I want to go deep into CentOS, but I want to kind of go on to a question about the kernel and the latest and greatest kind of situation. So give us what you told us in the Telegram chat about what you tried.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I popped CentOS in a VM so I could try it out and learn how it works because I've never used CentOS before, and I'm changing hostings on my website, and I'll have SSH access, and it'll be on a CentOS server, so I figured I should learn how to use it. And I get in there, and I go to see what kernel it's running just so I can know what to expect if I have any bugs or anything like that. and the kernel it's running is a 3.10 kernel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Chicken specifically getting gag. And I'm just like, what? Like, yeah, I agree. And if it was running a 4.5 kernel, I'd have been like, that's a little bit old, but okay. 4.15, that works. 3.10 is what I started Linux on 5 years ago. If I see 3.10, I'm thinking it's either going to be Android or I'm running something really, really old. So I went and I dug through DistroWatch and on the CentOS website, and apparently that is the latest version of CentOS.
All right, but Dan, you had an answer for that though.
They do apply security patches to that. So even though it's an older kernel, you're probably not going to be vulnerable like you're thinking. So it does get security updates.
Yeah, and the other question I was going to ask is, what is specifically missing from that kernel that you must have, apart from this is old?
Plethoras
Security.
of file system performance improvement updates for one.
Security.
You're going to install this on a server, and you're probably going to leave it there for maybe 10 years, and that's not unheard of.
True. Yeah.
So
I get that.
Once it gets certified, it's just going to stay there, and it's going to hum along, and everybody be happy.
And that's what CentOS is pretty much built on. The idea is that it's the stable thing, and that's kind of what I want to get a question out to you guys is: have we in the Linux world, or some of us in the Linux world, become spoiled to the point where we have to have the latest and greatest software on everything we run, and we feel that we must have it or we're somehow missing something? When you go back to distros and kernels that people use, like when you're talking about Debian, everybody talks about how stable Debian is, and it's older software, and a lot of people don't like that, including myself, because I want to run the latest software. But is that a bad thing, or is that a good thing that do we need to run the latest software?
I think
some cases, yes.
I would say it depends on what you're doing.
Not always.
All right, hold on. One at a time. Matt, go ahead.
I was going to say what Chicken said. I think it depends on your use case, honestly. If you are looking for a stable workstation that you just need to get production work done on, and all the tools are available to you based, if it's Debian or whatnot, and all the features and functions you need, and you just need it to be stable and running, then there's really no point in the latest and greatest unless there's a killer feature in like a new Canadian Live version or something that fixes an issue. Like, I think we do tend to do this weird chase the new shiny thing, but I think most computer users aren't that way. How many people have we worked with that do Windows or Mac software that's like 10, 15 years old? They're trying to run Windows XP software on Windows 10, or take your pick. But yeah, they're looking for stable.
I don't know that I agree that most computer users don't care, because Microsoft has gone from every couple of years, putting out a release, to every year putting out a release. Now every 6 months, a major feature release with updates every month.
Not to mention the dev
they wouldn't
builds.
be moving that schedule up that way if there wasn't demand from their user base.
No. I'm talking
server side.
I was going to say
The server side's different. So 2016.
No, this is regular Windows.
Right. But I mean, if you're looking at CentOS, you're thinking server side.
Yeah.
So I mean, the fact that it's like a 3-year cycle by the time you're getting a new version, that's pretty normal for the server market.
Chicken, what did you want to say?
Also have a lot of.
I feel like it can depend on a lot of things, because in my cases, it's often related directly to hardware support. A lot of my hardware tends to be newer, and kernel updates, typically things that ship with newer kernels or have newer kernels that are patched available. They won't even boot unless it's already got a newer kernel in it or something like that, or certain driver support. Like I've got a Ryzen laptop that will not boot just about anything that's released right now, except maybe 2 or 3 things, because they've got like 419 kernels out of the box. It's unfortunately sometimes there's no other choice.
Well, in that case, you would be right in saying you need something to run that. But I'm talking more on a general level of other distros or other machines that you have that you still kind of feel the same way, even though that one may need the latest and greatest. Does this one need the latest and greatest? And then does that decision hurt us as a whole, as a community, as trying out distros because we need the latest and greatest?
In a lot of cases, it's possible that it's, I don't want to use the word spoiled in like a too negative sense, but it could potentially have a spoiling effect because it's really easy to get access to those kinds of things. So there's so many systems built around just getting you the latest and greatest, or having a switch or a command that can just do that for you, and bam, you're running the dev release, or bam, you're in the beta release or whatever. And that's great and all, but I feel like the issue may not necessarily be that we always want the latest and greatest, but rather that we don't know how to deal with what happens when the latest and greatest isn't what we thought we were signing up for when things break.
I think these expectations come from smartphones in general, because before smartphones were popular in the mid-2000s, you would buy a box of software, and that was pretty much what you got. And you were lucky if you had like an expansion or, patches that came down later. But when smartphones and app stores and things like that came, people got used to the idea of like, I have the latest app. There's always, every time you look at your phone, 12 apps updated, 10 apps updated. Like, you're always getting a latest stream of stuff. And I think that expectation has become normal now. I think people just expect to have the latest.
Is that because open source, because it's open source, we're talking about mainly, your apps are not anywhere near probably as good as what proprietary closed software would be, right? So we need to get probably updated software to bring it up to speed, to be, more in line with what proprietary is, isn't it? So we're always probably missing something in regards to applications I'm talking about anyway. Would that be one way of looking at it? I'm not sure.
But there's something to be said for, like Dave was saying, with Windows and the increments and how frequent they're doing their updates. Now, Windows has theoretically become an Arch type thing, a rolling release. And we all know what happens with those. Stuff breaks more frequently too, and then just like Adam said, I remember you used to go to the store and you'd buy, Word or the Word series or whatever. And then the next one that came out was an update to it. And you had to have the key from the original one to do the update. I don't think the phrase latest and greatest, I think, is kind of a misnomer. The latest isn't always greatest. I agree with you, Alan, because sometimes, perfect examples. How many times I've said it here that I've turned around and put a later kernel on here on one machine and it's fine. I put a later kernel on another machine and it breaks something. It doesn't like it. When in fact, so what's wrong with running, a 415 kernel just like Peppermint's doing right now out of the box, and it runs rock solid. So, in one breath we want to go to the latest because we think that's going to benefit us, and then all of a sudden you wind up finding out it breaks something or something isn't quite working right. It's like, leave it alone. If it's working, it's doing its job, leave it alone. And the software itself, if you're going to get software, whether it's GIMP or whatever, and update, maybe that kind of stuff because there's improvements, there's features added. That's a different story. But when you're talking about the latest and greatest of stuff that works the core system, I think that's a whole other animal.
So is that that's more of an issue with the way Linux is architected, that all the drivers and everything are included in the kernel, so that when we want a newer driver for a device, we're forced to update the base core system of our whole machine just to get that new driver, as opposed to something like, say, Windows, where it's more of a hybrid, where they have a base kernel, but all of the drivers are loaded into user space as opposed to kernel space. And so you don't have the issue of having to rev like the very core of your system just to get support for your new graphics card.
Kernel modules have kind of smoothed a lot of that out, though.
Yeah, but they're still not really that prevalent.
Well,
no,
in
and the
that,
new Red Hat is working on that. You're going to see more things independently loaded, maybe not in user space per se, but independent of the core, so that you'd be able to update things. So
That'd
it's a
be
big,
nice.
it's a big undertaking, I'm sure.
The only downside to that, though, is look at what happens with Windows, or you compare it even when you're doing an install. Now you could load up a Linux system and you're ready to go. Where Windows, you load it up and then you got to sit there and go out and get this driver and that driver and this driver. And you
But
start.
how often do people really reinstall Windows though?
Yeah,
Pardon me?
Windows Update nowadays actually helps you that automatically downloads the drivers, official drivers and everything like that.
But that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, it's frustrating that we're limited in so many ways by that. Like talking about latest software, we're limited by our package managers in a lot of ways, and we have to tack onto our package managers, third-party repositories, or use something like the AUR, which is no better than just downloading an exe, really. And so we have kind of architected our way into a position where trying to get the latest and greatest is dangerous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all. I think getting if we're talking software specifically, I think we've also architected in a way where it's easier to get the latest and easier to get the newest stuff with app images, snaps, and flatpaks and all the other stuff that comes along with it. Now there's caveats, obviously, with those formats just as much as any other install format, obviously. But I think that's something that we still have issues around as well, though, outside of the core system.
Yeah, those packaging systems are great because that's exactly how the other operating systems are handling it. The Mac App Store and the Windows Store, similar ideas. The developer pushes their changes, so you always get the latest thing from the developer, not from the distro maintainer, not from the packager, but straight from the developer, straight to your machine. And things like flatpaks and snaps and app images as well. They need to be pushed pretty hard. And I know like Fedora was working on the Silver Blue project, I think it was called.
Yep.
Trying to push flatpaks as like sort of the user space applications, and the core would stay relatively stable.
They're even trying it for the desktop.
Yeah. I was going to say, because it's almost similar to what Nitrix tries to do with app image.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, going back to what you said, Adam, about the architecture below it, when 1604 was the default and 1804 had just come out, there were distros that I wouldn't be able to run because the software that I wanted was in 1804, or at least the back end software was in 1804 and wasn't no longer available in 1604. So you couldn't install certain things on a 1604 base for the longest time, like KD Neon was based on 1604. So it was something that I couldn't run for a while because I needed certain software and I couldn't get it on a 1604 machine.
Sometimes you can make even on Ubuntu newer repositories work.
Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. And sometimes you spend 2-3 hours looking to see if you can do this, and it shouldn't be that hard. I guess that was going back to your point that we've architected our way there.
Yeah, the package managers are, just for our everyday software, things like flatpaks and all that would solve a lot of our problems that the package manager creates. The package manager kind of, in my opinion, kind of gets in the way a lot of times because, people on Windows, for example, if they want the latest Firefox, they just install Firefox and it automatically updates on its own because Firefox has an update manager thing for it. But if I load up Debian, I'm going to get Firefox ESR from 2 decades ago, and if I load up Ubuntu 1604, I get a certain version and it updates to the latest. But maybe another distro doesn't update to the latest.
You sound like you're one of those latest and greatest guys with that
I
decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy using the latest software as well. I like the new features. I like the security. I like what comes with it. Sure, there's a potential for breakage, but I think if it's done by the person who actually created the software, as in like flatpaks and snaps, then I feel like there's less of a chance that there's going to be an issue as long as the core part of being a flatpak and snap is proper, and there shouldn't be as many issues because the people who know the application are the ones packaging it. But when we have volunteers who do a good job, and I'm not disparaging them, but when we have open source volunteers who are doing the packaging, who are doing the trying to figure out, well, I'm packaging this library that has to work with this, that has to work with that, and there's a lot of dependencies and everything. That's kind of in the way. I know some people complain that flatpaks are too big and snaps are too big, and it's like, dude, it's 2019. Like if you don't have space, then get with the program. But
beyond the space issues, though, I mean, we're talking about how snaps or flatpaks might solve that kind of problem where it's coming from the maintainer of the program itself. But the issue with that could be that now they have to check for issues that happen across a variety of platforms, which they are in no way, shape, or form prepared to deal with. They're working on their package, and now they're getting bugs coming from 30 different distribution types.
So that underscores the need for a good reliability with the flatpak and snap system as opposed to the package itself.
So far,
those kind of issues shouldn't fall on the developer of the package, the developer of the application. It should fall on the people who develop Snap, Snapd or whatever, or develop Flatpak. Those are the issues that need to be resolved.
So far, we're looking at the ability to have like different core snaps and such. And the issue with that is that now we're making it easy for all of them to vary no matter where they're installed.
Yeah. And that's a Snap problem, not so much
I think Flatpak is pretty good at not doing that.
Yeah, Flatpak just has runtimes for every version, and you don't really have that problem.
Well, for the most part, I just stick to the applications in the repositories. I haven't had any issues with that. Very rarely have I had to run a Snap or a Flatpak at this point.
But see, that's kind of what my original question alluded to. You have Adam, you're talking about you're the latest and greatest guy. Mark in chat said he's the latest and greatest guy, and yet you have other people. Nate, you're okay with using an older version of something.
Well, Tumbleweed typically has a newer version, but it's not always the latest version, and I'm okay with wherever I'm at the stream of updates. I'm pretty happy. I don't have to.
Well, what I'm saying is the idea to have the latest and greatest something that's in our mind, or is it something physical that there are use cases like Chicken said about hardware that won't run except if it has the latest and greatest. That's different.
I would say it depends on what your use case is, like Chicken was saying. Like the hardware, yes, that's one argument. For me, typically, I have certain parts of my system that are always latest and greatest, and I have certain parts of my system that are older. For instance, I keep Xorg, for instance, which if you break it, it's extremely hard to fix it. So I keep
down.
Yeah, I keep Xorg on whatever is in the default in the repositories, but I do not use the default kernel. I use the latest low latency LaQuarks kernel, and the reason for that is because sometimes low latency can help in gaming, and it really just depends on your game. But there's a lot of different reasons for that. And then I also have the development Mesa drivers because of gaming. And also I have all those because that's what Draugr OS has. And having that set up on my own system makes it so that I don't have to go and boot up my Draugr OS system just to do a quick test for something that might rely on those. So I can just do it right here.
But yeah, I see what you're saying, Rocco, about like it being a mental thing though. Like, do you actually need like the latest, right? But I guess it just depends on the use case, right?
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying, I guess what I'm trying to get at, and I don't think I'm getting it across as best as I can, is that there are use cases for needing the latest and greatest for a specific reason. But the other cases is what I'm talking about. Is that something that's just in our minds that we need the latest and greatest, or is there a physical reason why we would need the latest and greatest on use cases that don't specifically need it?
Are you talking core? Are you talking are you talking software or both, or what are you talking about there?
I'm talking anything. I'm talking kernels. I'm talking like we usually update to the latest kernel. We usually want the latest version of, say, OBS or the latest. Not to say that latest version would even give us anything, but that's my question. Does that latest version give us anything tangible to use, or is it just we feel better?
I think if there's features in there that have been improved or added or things like that, that's what I look at, if I'm going to update to something. But the other thing too, if I've learned nothing else, it's like anything else that a new car model comes out. you don't run out and buy it, pre-order it, or buy it the second it comes out because you know there's going to be bugs in it. Yet
Tesla would like a word with you.
What's that?
I think Run with a Dolphin has got it. It's all in your head.
That's
Certainly it's for me.
definitely a good point, though, Joe. And I agree with that in a lot of ways. Is that if you're paying attention to it, there's probably is something you're gonna want. But people who are just like always updating, but never actually know why they're updating, there's probably no real need for it to be there.
See, I want Dolphin in the chat right now. I want him in the Zoom chat because he'd be a perfect guy to ask because he's a guy that runs Debian, runs older software, older versions of software, maybe not old, but older than most of us would run.
He actually clarified some things for me about the way Debian kernel releases work as well, and that even though it's not a matching kernel release to what we're seeing in like mainline, it's still receiving a lot of the patches from the later point releases down the line.
Yeah.
So,
And CentOS is the same thing.
So the way things are packaged may have a big part to do with it.
Yeah.
Well, Dolphin said it's all in your head. That's what he said.
That's probably not wrong.
I'm
For
glad
me,
you said the correct answer. It is all in our heads.
Yeah.
For me, I'm happy with whatever comes with a distro when you install it. But a good example for me would be KDN Live. I use the app image. That's always good to be up to date because you do find that you get less crashes in KDN Live with a more up to date KDN Live. So
that would be that's an example because that there gives you a tangible reason why you would want the updates because it crashes less.
The only time it's not tangible is OpenShot because it won't change.
Yes, because they
Open
fixed
crash.
1,000 bugs and it still crashes the same way as it did before.
I think a good analogy for the people who like really like to, they're always updating. Like it's a mental thing, right? Like they just have to have the latest, whether or not they use it or need it or anything. Those are the same people that put like cold air intakes on their car because they think, oh yeah, even though it's not gonna make a difference to them, mentally it's like, yeah, this is gonna.
Maybe Windows has done this to us.
And so
vinyl stickers. They put vinyl stickers.
Exactly. Yeah. They'll put like all these like brand stickers. Like yeah, it'll go fast. Yeah, but it doesn't. It is all mental posturing, really.
Zeb, you wanted to say something. What did you want to say? Zeb?
Who? Oh, Zeb.
Yeah, I was just going to say that with Peppermint, it comes with a 415 kernel, and I am always trying UKUU to go, 419, 420. Now I'm really seriously thinking about doing. I don't need it. Install Peppermint, run it with what it comes with, install the NVIDIA drivers, and then stop chasing the moon. I mean, I was seriously looking at buying an RTX 2060. And then I read an article that says if you've already got a GTX 1070 Ti, don't bother.
Yeah.
And you've got a good thing going for you as well there, Zeb, because the 415 kernels, I think we talked about this last time, though, because those are maintained and patched directly by Canonical for Ubuntu and whatnot. They're getting those patches. They're getting those fixes. So you don't really have to worry about those kinds of things. So even though it's still 415, it's going to have the fixes that you're seeing later on down the line.
Absolutely. But that's my big struggle. I always want to buy the latest and greatest. I mean, I keep speccing a Threadripper AMD processor.
Oh, I know you are.
The price says stop, so I have to.
Well, that also goes back to not just software, but it also goes to hardware. We again want the latest and greatest, and does that give us a tangible benefit? Like just say upgrade. Yes, but wait now. Just that's why I'm saying like you want to upgrade your video card, but maybe your video card or upgrading your video card from the next version is not really worth the money. But we have this thing in our mind that we want to upgrade our video card, and there's a new one out there, so we think we need to do it.
As far as like I can relate to the video cards because I don't build my own systems anymore. But what I used to do was I was always a generation or two behind because it was more fiscally responsible as far as like money. I'm not dropping $700 or $3,000 on a Titan or a RX Vega 64. Like that's just insane to me.
Like to be fair though, all right.
I think it's just part of being an enthusiast about anything. I mean, and not even just technology. Like there are people in car culture and like collecting people who collect. It's like, oh, you don't have the latest forever stamps. You're a noob. I think this goes into any enthusiast, right?
Honestly, with me specifically, I know when it comes to hardware, I know I want that new RTX card, but I also know there's going to be bugs. There's going to be driver support issues. There's going to be a whole bunch of issues where if I just waited for a while and let them get all the software issues out, then it's going to be perfectly fine. But software-wise, personally, I like running mid to late betas because I like the chance that I might end up getting a new feature. I know that I don't necessarily need those new features, but I like being able to get them before everybody else because it's fun. And I like being able to see them and be like, hey, guys, this is what's coming down the line. And my friends being like, okay, cool. Or I don't like that.
Yeah, but you're also taking that same chance and breaking something too.
Right.
And this is that you're honest, you're completely right. But at the same time, if I do break something, then I don't mind submitting a bug report because as a developer, I understand how invaluable bug reports are, especially when it's something that, if you're doing this as an open source project, you're getting no money from it. You're doing it because you love to do it, not because you're going to make money off of it or something like that. And getting those bug reports, when you get that bug report, you can't help but be like, thank you for giving me a bug report, because especially when they give that to you and they're not mad about it because they understand that these things happen.
It's like giving Dobby a sock.
Yes, because they're like, yes, I can fix this bug because I know what's happening.
But the only point saying that the kernels, like Zeb said, and Dave or whoever said earlier that, or Dan, that, you're getting the patches within, even though it's an older number. And I do think that's where the mental thing comes in, because you see that higher number, you automatically assume that you're getting more in that.
Getting more better.
Release than what
Should we do a Debian challenge to see whether we can all run the software that comes with Debian?
Let's not get crazy here.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to the use case thing, though, right? Because we're all running a desktop. So think about trying to run like an NFS file server, and that's all it does. You don't need all of those things.
And especially
it's doing one thing, and it just needs to run that really well.
And you don't want that changing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And especially if you're running that system and you're intentionally not hooking it up to the internet, it's just staying on like a LAN, you don't need some super secure system.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine if it's stable. It's perfectly fine if it's just high performance.
Yes.
If it does what you need, but it's not going to open up some sort of security vulnerability, by all means, run whatever you need to. Get whatever you specifically need, whether it opens a vulnerability or not, if it's not going to be a vulnerability because it's not exposing it on the internet.
That's where running a U-Boat would work out better than a Lamborghini. Yeah. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
You truck along versus, and you bypass something that's critical.
Well,
anyway, are we going to pick a distro for next week?
Yeah, I was going to say this conversation's gotta end because we can continue it next week, but for this week we were really running over. So, okay, we're going to try YouMix, right? You're going to try YouMix?
In case you guys want to know, that's what Rocco's running.
Okay, so Matt introduced me to YouMix this week.
Running it. I'm running it.
Are you?
Yeah.
And it's awesome, right?
I put it in.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, it's got some nice defaults too, I must say.
Okay, so YouMix is a distro that Tony George took and made Unity and tweaked it. Well, he didn't make Unity. I'm sorry. I have bad words. He took Unity and tweaked it to make it his own distro, basically. And it is excellent. I'm sorry. I still like Unity. It still has the best scaling. It still has some of the best things about Linux. I'm sorry, it's one of the most polished Linux distros out there, even though it's not super maintained anymore. And that is one question I have.
Does that mean you can then just now cut in a little intro and put your Unity video up?
That one I couldn't find?
Yeah, that one Dave couldn't find.
Wow.
This is why we don't.
But anyway, I would really like to try. I would really like you guys to try YouMix this week.
I already know Zeb's response to this one. Next.
Been there, seen it, done it. Let me save time for next week. Next.
Yes, but the question
for next week, put it on the board, and this is because the way Switch to Linux painted the picture of it, and what I saw of it, it's pretty ugly the way it was working, but it's also in its infant stages is Scepter.
Yeah,
Is it security? That's a pen testing distro. Is it not?
Is UMX going to go behind Tony George's paywall?
There's a free ISO for a mini version kicking around. If there's some extra add-ons with the paid 11, it's charging like $11 for like the paid version of it. It's not like stupid expensive.
Yeah, so
I don't think Sceptor is pen testing. I think it's a security, kind of like Tails.
Yeah, it is, but it'd just be interesting to play with something like that. Totally different than what we've ever done.
I think the difference was that Tails like completely forgets everything, whereas this has the ability to remain consistent.
Yep.
So
it uses Tor.
I'm down for UMix.
I'm good with it. Let's do it.
I'm down
like
with it too.
I'd just like to point out that not by force, she's been very happy with elementary.
Really? Can I get her to say that it wasn't by force?
There we go.
Come on, Bell.
Can I see both of Chicken's hands? So
I was going to say very convincing, right? Chicken?
Rocco, can I say a word?
Yeah, go ahead.
As some people know, especially on Telegram, I volunteered and gave you and Zeb a list of all distros you've tested since last summer. And I will admit one thing. We're meant to be testing Linux, but for the most part, it seems we're testing Debian and Ubuntu.
Hate to break it, that's what a lot of distros are based around.
I know, but
what would you like us to do?
Us to test things.
Yeah, but we've done Solus, we've done Fedora, we've done a version of.
I did Manjaro.
Right. I'm talking about the majority of the tests.
Chrome OS? Didn't we do Chrome OS at one point?
We did.
You did, yeah.
The majority
all right,
of
hold on.
out there are based on Ubuntu and Debian.
Yeah, there's like 4 people talking at once. Yes, we did try Manjaro. We did try Arco. We did try what was that? It was Chrome OS, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There were. I mean, the majority of it. You're right. The majority of it may be Ubuntu Debian, but that, like I said, that like they said, it is the majority of the Linux distros.
Okay.
So if you have a suggestion you want us to try, sure, let's bring it up.
Fun too.
Okay,
Devuin.
All right. Is everybody okay with YouMix?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we need a link to it though.
We need
Zeb posted a link.
It's already in the chat.
I think it's pronounced UMix-OS.
I think, yeah, something like that.
Oh, UMix. Okay.
UMix.
Where's this link?
I like UMix better.
I like UMix better.
YouTube chat.
We call it what we want here, okay?
Oh, wait, so I can say Debian now?
What I would like you guys to do is for those of you who are not Unity fans, I would like you even more so to go into it with an open mind, because Unity is one of those things where if you don't like it and you don't go with an open mind, there's no even sense of even trying it, because you're not going to like it. You have to buy into it, just like you have to buy into GNOME. You have to buy into Unity. So if you like Unity, all I'm asking in this test is that you test out maybe some of the tweaks that Tony did, and we can give him some feedback on what the distro is good at, what it's not, what can be added to it. And yes, there is a free mini ISO, and there also is a ISO that you get if you put the $11 through it, and it just basically gives you some add-ons to it. So the free ISO is easily downloaded, and you can try it.
Functionally,
So it's based on Unity 7 or 8?
7. So it's stable.
Functionally, my Plasma
Zeb's case.
setup is pretty much like Unity, so this should be a fun one.
So
well,
you
that's
already
what
bought
I'm
into
streaming off of. So the YouMix. Yeah, that's what I'm going to.
And this is coming from a guy who didn't like Unity.
Wait, that was a while ago, Matt.
I think he did a video on it.
I did. It's still sitting on the cutting room floor.
Now, I will just send a little warning to Tony George that the last time Rocco recommended having a look at Unity, they pulled the plug on it.
Yeah,
So,
don't
knowing
put
you, Tony.
don't pull the plug, please.
You know what? I got Unity right here.
Nice.
Well, look, I'm sorry, but I am in heaven right now because this is exactly what I want from a Linux distro.
Hey, Rocco, and guess what? That was one of those oddball distros that I recommended.
That was an oddball distro from Matt, and I'll give him. He got one time. He got it right.
1 out of like 400.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll talk more about it next week, and we'll do that. But for now, we kind of gotta end the show.
Yep.
I do want to apologize for the website because the website is up, but some of the pages, like I think Tyler, you pointed out that the community page is like a garbled spin of text. And I tried for 2.5 hours to start making a pretty nice looking community page, and WordPress decided to have some ridiculous error, and I lost all of those 2 hours worth of stuff that I had changed. So I'll try again, but for now it is what it is. So there you go. All right, last word, Zeb.
No matter what OS you use, just enjoy your computing.
All right, Tyler.
Thanks again for the show. Like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, my Plasma setup is very much like Unity, so playing with YouMix OS is actually going to be fun.
All right, last word, Dan.
All right, yeah, thanks again, and appreciate the show, and I don't know, Unity. I haven't touched it in probably 4 years, probably. It's been a while.
Open mind, Dan. Open mind.
I'm gonna try. It's been a while though. I mean, it just been a while.
Peter, last word.
Okay, it's very apt that we tried Linux Mint today, because I encourage you all to support Mintcast tomorrow. They're recording the number 300 episode. So it's mintcast.org.
300. Wow, that's awesome. All right, Joe, last word.
Well, all I could say is thank you again, as usual, for a nice stream this week and a lot of fun. And Linux, let's get the word out. Keep getting the word out. That's all I can say. Keep plugging away.
Colin, last word.
Mint's awesome. Always has been. It probably always will be. Getting better every day. And looking forward to trying a bit of Unity all week. So I've already started. So I'll continue the journey till next Saturday, or for me, Sunday morning.
There you go. Chicken, last word.
Yes, sorry, I'm handling the Telegram chat social thingy. I got you.
Thank you.
Elementary OS, totally uncoerced and of her own volition.
Fake news.
Fake news. It's all right. We know how it is. We know. So does Best Buy. Dave, last word.
Thank you, Rocco. Thank you, Zeb. Thank you all. And may all our hardware, old and new, keep running for another week.
There you go.
Nice.
Matt, last word.
Thank you as always, Rocco, for the show. Always appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what people's response to this one is, honestly.
Me too. I would love to have Tony on, but I don't think that's going to happen. Adam, last word.
Thanks for the show. Looking forward to going back to Unity because I missed it quite a lot.
All right. Scott, last word.
Yes, I'd just like to say thanks again for having such a minty, fresh episode. And I really do recommend anybody that's watching this, give it a try. Can't really go wrong just for trying it. It's really supported by a lot of community, a lot of documentation. Forum is outstanding. Lots of support in Linux Mint website. Have fun with it, and then we'll look forward to next week's distro.
All right, Michael, last word.
Yeah, thanks for the stream, and I guess I will find out the joys or terrors of Unity, one of the two.
Well, Michael, like I said, I did want to get back to you about your experience being newer to Linux. So, are you coming back next week?
I can try to do that, yeah.
All right, well, maybe we'll talk next week about your experience on Linux. But go into trying YouMix with an open mind.
Not opposed to that.
All right, Thomas, last word.
All right, thanks for having me on the show again today. I almost had some company that would have been on here with me, but that's okay. Maybe another time. Check out DruggerOS at druggeros.ml. Fair warning, the website's under reconstruction right now, so it's not quite up to par, but it's working. And looking forward to trying Unity. I loved Unity. It was just a little bit slow, so I'm hoping this one might actually rectify that a little bit.
Nate, last word.
Hey, thanks again for having me, for tolerating my presence. And I look forward to YouMix. I think it'll be a great time. I tried Unity once, probably 6 years ago or so, and I didn't like it, but I'll be more open-minded this time, I promise.
Much more polished.
Much more. Big Pod, last word, brother.
Thanks for having me today. Hopefully I will join you guys next week. And thanks for listening to my coughing.
Simon, you made it for the last word. Great job.
Yeah.
Or
sorry.
is it Michael? Is it Michael or Simon?
Oh.
Ooh.
You know, I may be wearing a mask of some sort. You never know.
You may be. Is it really you? Anyway, last word, brother.
Well, you can check out the stuff that I do at Lubuntu.me, the non-cloud Lubuntu, non-cloud-based one. Otherwise, I guess I have a Patreon account, and my thoughts on Unity. Unity was actually the first desktop environment I tried, so I would be curious to just try this out in a virtual machine or something and see how it's going. But otherwise, I'll just keep going on Lubuntu. You know.
There you go. Well, I don't care, if you try it out in a virtual machine or you put it on real hardware. But I think it's definitely worth a try, especially if you were a Unity fan, because I think the tweaks that he made in it are what Unity needed to be made. So I was pretty surprised, except maybe the default wallpaper.
Yeah,
that
wallpaper.
I've got some suggestions for you, Rock.
Okay.
Yeah, starts with an elementary OS.
But we're pretty picky here, so All right. If you want to join the discussion this week, check us out at t.me/Telegram t.me/Big Daddy Linux Live. All right. Until next week, we will see you all later.
See ya.
See ya.
Cheers.
Adios.